rejected for her curves. But that night, the lonely rancher couldn't resist the bullet missed Katie's head by inches, splintering the wooden post behind her. She dropped to the dirt, heart hammering, as another shot rang out across the valley. The stagecoach she'd been riding lay overturned 30 yards back, wheels still spinning, the driver sprawled motionless beside it. 3 masked riders circled the wreckage, rifles raised, searching for survivors. Katie pressed herself flat against the rocky outcrop, her full figure making it harder to find cover. The tight corset she wore dug into her ribs, making each breath painful. She'd worn it because the other women at the dance hall in Springwater said men preferred smaller waists. Now she wished she could breathe properly. Hoofbeats thundered closer. Katie squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for discovery. Instead, a different sound cut through the chaos. A rifle cracked from somewhere up the ridge, and one of the bandits jerked backward off his horse. The other 2 wheeled around, firing wildly at the hillside. Another shot. Another bandit down. The 3rd rider spurred his horse and fled eastward, abandoning his fallen companions. Katie stayed frozen, unsure if her rescuer was friend or foe. Minutes stretched like hours. Finally, a tall figure emerged from the rocks above, leading a dappled gray horse. He moved with careful steps, rifle held ready, scanning the scene. He was older than Katie expected, maybe 40, with sun-weathered skin and dark hair graying at the temples. His eyes were sharp blue, cautious. When he spotted Katie, he lowered the rifle slightly but didn't holster it. "You hurt?" His voice was rough, unused to conversation. Katie shook her head, trying to stand. Her legs trembled beneath her skirts. I don't think so." He glanced at the overturned coach, then back at her. "Anyone else?" "The driver." "He's not moving." The man walked to the driver, knelt briefly, then shook his head. He returned to Katie, studying her with an expression she couldn't read. His gaze swept over her curves, lingered a moment, then moved away. Katie felt heat rise to her cheeks. She knew that look. The same one the stage manager gave her last week when he said there wasn't room for girls her size in his show. "Name's Cole Bennett. I've got a ranch 5 miles north." He gestured toward the ridge. "You'll need somewhere safe. That 3rd rider might come back with friends." Katie hesitated. Going anywhere with a strange man seemed dangerous, but staying here seemed worse. "I'm Katie Sullivan. I was headed to Silver Creek to work at the hotel. Silver Creek's 2 days' ride. You won't make it on foot." Cole moved to his horse, checking the saddle. "I'm offering shelter for the night. Nothing more. You can decide what to do come morning." The sun was dropping toward the western peaks, painting the sky orange and red. Katie looked at the dead driver, the ruined coach, her scattered belongings strewn across the dirt road. She had $17 sewn into her dress hem and nowhere else to go. "All right," she said quietly. Cole helped her gather what she could salvage from the wreckage. A carpet bag with 2 dresses, a pair of shoes, a small mirror. He tied everything to his saddle, then offered his hand to help her mount. Katie took it, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. She settled behind the saddle, trying not to press too close against his back. They rode in silence through the darkening valley. Katie watched the landscape roll past, all sagebrush and red rock so different from the green hills of Missouri she'd left behind. Cole's ranch appeared as full darkness fell, a low adobe house with a barn and several corrals. Lamplight showed through one window. He dismounted, helped Katie down, and led her inside. The house was simple but clean. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, a wooden table and chairs sat near the kitchen area, and a single bedroom door stood half open at the back. Everything spoke of a man living alone. "You can have the bed," Cole said, moving to light another lamp. "I'll take the floor out here." Katie opened her mouth to protest, but he was already gathering blankets from a chest. His movements were efficient, practiced. This wasn't the first time he'd slept on his own floor. "There's stew in the pot if you're hungry." "I'll see to my horse." He left before she could thank him. Katie ladled herself some stew, surprised at how good it tasted. Venison, potatoes, herbs she couldn't name. She ate standing by the fireplace, studying the few personal items in the room. A photograph of a young woman on the mantel. A pair of spurs hanging by the door. Books stacked neatly on a shelf, their spines worn from reading. Cole returned smelling of horse and hay. He moved around her carefully, maintaining distance, as if afraid to get too close. He filled his own bowl and sat at the table, eating without conversation. Katie finished her meal and washed her bowl in the basin. "Thank you," she finally said. "For saving me." "For this." Cole nodded without looking up. "Get some rest. Morning comes early." Katie retreated to the bedroom, closing the door most of the way. She removed her boots and loosened her corset, finally able to breathe fully. Through the gap in the door, she could see Cole settling onto the floor by the fireplace, his rifle within arm's reach. She lay awake in the darkness, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the desert night. Somewhere outside, a coyote howled. The house creaked and settled, and from the main room came the sound of Cole's steady breathing. Katie thought about the way he'd looked at her, that quick sweep of his eyes before he turned away. She'd seen desire there, quickly masked, but also something else. Loneliness, maybe, or fear. She touched the photograph on the nightstand beside the bed. Even in the dim moonlight filtering through the window, she could see it was the same woman from the mantel. Pretty, delicate, everything Katie wasn't. Sleep came slowly, and when it did, Katie dreamed of bullets and blue eyes and hands that were gentle despite their strength. Katie woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. Gray dawn light filtered through the bedroom window. She dressed quickly, finger-combing her auburn hair and pinning it back as best she could. When she emerged, Cole was already at the stove, turning strips of bacon in an iron skillet. "Morning," he said without turning. "Coffee's ready." Katie poured herself a cup, grateful for the warmth. The desert morning was cold, nothing like the muggy Missouri dawns she remembered. She watched Cole work, noting the easy way he moved around the kitchen, completely self-sufficient. "I can cook," she offered, "if you want to see to your animals." Cole glanced at her, surprised. "You know how? I worked in a boarding house for 3 years, fed 20 men every morning." Katie set down her cup. "I earned my keep." Something shifted in Cole's expression. He nodded, wiped his hands on a cloth, and headed outside. Katie took over the bacon, added eggs to another pan, found bread that needed toasting. By the time Cole returned, breakfast was ready and the table was set. They ate together, the silence less awkward than the night before. Cole finished first, pushed back from the table, and studied her across the rough wooden surface. "I need to ride into town today. Report what happened to the sheriff. You can come along, catch a stage to Silver Creek from there." Katie's stomach tightened. Silver Creek. A hotel job that probably didn't exist anymore, since she was 2 days late and had no way to send word. She had $17 and nowhere to go. "Is there work around here?" The question came out before she could stop it. Cole's eyebrows rose. "What kind of work?" "Any kind. Cooking, cleaning, mending. I can handle horses, too, a little. My father had a farm before he died. This isn't farm country. It's hard land. Dry most of the year, freezing in winter, burning in summer." Cole's voice was careful, not discouraging, but honest. "And it's isolated. Town's 15 miles. I go maybe once a month. I'm not afraid of hard work or being alone." Katie met his eyes. "And I don't have anywhere else to go. The hotel job was all I had." Cole stood, walked to the window, stared out at his land. Katie could see the tension in his shoulders the way his hands gripped the window frame. Finally, he turned back. "I can pay room and board plus $20 a month for cooking and household work. But there are conditions." Katie waited. "This is my home. I value my privacy and my peace. I don't tolerate gossip or drama or complications. You'd have the bedroom, I'd sleep out here. We'd keep things professional and proper." His blue eyes were steady, serious. "If you agree to stay, you agree to those terms. No changing the arrangement later." Katie understood what he wasn't saying. He was protecting himself from exactly the kind of complications a woman living in his house could bring. She should have been offended, but she wasn't. She recognized the same wariness in him that she felt herself. "I agree," she said. "Professional and proper." Cole studied her a long moment, then nodded once. "All right, then. I'll still need to report the stage robbery. We'll go to town, make this arrangement official with the sheriff as witness. That way there's no question about propriety." They rode out an hour later, Katie seated behind Cole on his gray horse. The town of Redstone was smaller than Katie expected, just one main street with a general store, saloon, sheriff's office, and a handful of other buildings. Cole tied his horse outside the sheriff's office and helped Katie down. Sheriff Gary Price was a stocky man with shrewd eyes and a salt and pepper mustache. He listened to Cole's account of the stage robbery, making notes in a ledger. When Cole mentioned hiring Katie as his housekeeper, the sheriff's eyebrows rose. "That so?" Price looked at Katie. "You agreeable to this arrangement, miss?" "Yes, sir." "You understand people will talk? Single woman, living with a bachelor rancher?" Katie lifted her chin. "People always talk, Sheriff. I need work, Mr. Bennett needs help. That's all there is to it." Price grunted, scribbled something in his ledger. Fair enough. I'll note it official. If anyone asks, I'll vouch that it's a proper employment arrangement. He looked at Cole. You keep it proper, Bennett. That's my intention. Cole's voice was flat, brooking no argument. They stopped at the general store next. Cole bought supplies, including fabric, thread, and other items Katie would need. The store owner, a thin woman named Helen Morris, gave Katie a long, assessing look that made her skin prickle. You the new girl at Bennett's place? Helen's tone was neutral, but her eyes were cold. I'm his housekeeper, Katie replied evenly. Helen sniffed. We'll see how long that lasts. She wrapped their purchases without another word. On the ride back, Katie felt Cole's tension. Did I say something wrong? Helen's just got opinions about everything. Ignore her. But his voice was tight. Katie wanted to ask more, but remembered his rules about privacy. She stayed quiet, watching the desert landscape roll past. When they reached the ranch, Cole unloaded the supplies and disappeared into the barn without a word. Katie put away the groceries, then explored the house more thoroughly. Besides the bedroom and main room, there was a small washroom with a copper tub and a pantry that needed organizing. She spent the afternoon cleaning, sorting, making the space feel more like a home and less like a lonely man's shelter. When Cole came in for supper, he stopped short. The house smelled of fresh bread and roasted chicken. The table was set with actual cloth napkins Katie had found in a trunk. Candles burned in the center, making the room feel warm. You didn't have to, he started. I told you. I earn my keep. Katie brought the food to the table. Sit down before it gets cold. They ate together, and this time Cole actually seemed to relax slightly. He complimented the bread. Katie asked questions about the ranch, keeping them practical, work-related. How many cattle did he run? What needed fixing? When was branding season? Cole answered, warming to the subject. He had 200 head of cattle, ran them on open range with 3 seasonal hands who came during roundup. The barn needed new shingles. Branding was in 2 months. He was planning to build a new corral in the spring. After supper, Cole retreated to the porch while Katie cleaned up. She could see him through the window, sitting on the steps, smoking a cigarette, staring at the darkening sky. There was such loneliness in his posture that Katie's heart ached. She finished the dishes and joined him outside, keeping a respectful distance. Mind if I sit? Cole shrugged. Not quite permission, but not refusal. Katie sat on the opposite end of the porch steps. They watched the stars emerge, brilliant and countless in the clear desert sky. Your wife, Katie said quietly, the woman in the photographs. What was her name? Cole was silent so long Katie thought he wouldn't answer. Then, barely above a whisper, Elizabeth. She died 4 years ago. Fever took her in 3 days. I'm sorry. People say that. Cole's voice was rough. They don't know what it means, being alone. Katie thought of her own losses. Her father to drink and debt. Her mother to pneumonia. The man in Missouri who'd promised to marry her, then changed his mind when he found someone prettier, thinner. I know, she said simply. Cole looked at her then, really looked at her. In the starlight, his eyes were dark and searching. Why did you really want to stay? You could find work in town, a boarding house or something? Katie considered lying, then decided on truth. The stage manager in Springwater told me I was too heavy to work in his show. The man I was supposed to marry decided he wanted someone else. The hotel in Silver Creek probably doesn't want me either. She met Cole's gaze. But you offered me work without caring what I look like. That matters. Cole's jaw tightened. Those people are fools. The words were quiet, almost angry. Katie felt warmth spread through her chest. Thank you. They sat in silence after that, but it felt different. Less like two strangers and more like two people who understood loneliness. Eventually, Cole stood, said goodnight, and went inside. Katie followed a few minutes later. But that night, lying in Elizabeth's bed, surrounded by Elizabeth's things, Katie heard Cole pacing in the main room, back and forth restless, unable to settle. She closed her eyes and tried to ignore the sound, tried to ignore the way her heart beat faster, knowing he was just beyond that door, tried to ignore the growing awareness that this arrangement might be harder to keep professional than either of them expected. The next 3 weeks fell into a rhythm. Katie rose before dawn, started coffee, prepared breakfast. Cole worked the ranch, checking fences, tending cattle, making repairs. They ate meals together, spoke of practical things, maintained careful distance. At night, Cole slept by the fireplace while Katie took the bedroom, and both pretended not to notice the tension building between them. Katie transformed the house. She mended curtains, scrubbed floors, organized the pantry, planted an herb garden near the kitchen door, She baked bread twice a week, made preserves from wild berries she found in the canyon, sewed new shirts for Cole from the fabric he'd bought. The work was hard but satisfying. She felt useful, valued in a way she hadn't in years. Cole noticed everything. She'd catch him watching her hang laundry, his expression unreadable, or standing in the doorway while she cooked, looking like he wanted to say something but never finding the words. The awareness between them grew heavier each day. One afternoon, Katie was beating rugs outside when a rattlesnake coiled near her foot. She froze, heart in her throat. The snake's rattle buzzed a warning. Before she could move, Cole was there, grabbing her around the waist, pulling her back. The snake struck empty air where she'd been standing. Cole's rifle cracked once, and the snake went still. Katie trembled against Cole's chest, his arms still tight around her waist. She could feel his heart hammering against her back, smell the sweat and leather of him. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Cole released her abruptly, stepping back. "You all right?" His voice was rough. Katie nodded, unable to speak. Cole holstered his rifle, kicked the dead snake away with his boot, and walked off toward the barn without another word. But Katie stood there for several minutes, her waist burning where his arm had been. That night at supper, Cole was quieter than usual. Katie served pot roast with vegetables, trying to ignore the tension. Finally, Cole set down his fork. "I'm riding to the north pasture tomorrow, checking on the herd. I'll be gone 2, maybe 3 days. Katie's stomach sank, though she kept her expression neutral. "All right, do you need me to pack supplies?" "Already done." Cole's eyes flicked to her, then away. "You'll be alone here. There's a shotgun in the closet if you need it, and bolt the door at night." "I'll be fine." Cole nodded, stood, grabbed his hat. "I'm going to check the horses." He left before Katie could respond. She cleaned up supper slowly, troubled by the abrupt distance Cole had put between them. Since the snake incident, he'd barely looked at her. Katie understood why. That moment when he'd held her, when their bodies pressed together, had crossed an invisible line. Cole was retreating to safety. The next morning, Cole left before dawn. Katie woke to find him already gone, his bedroll packed, a brief note on the table saying he'd be back by Friday. The house felt enormous and empty without him. Katie threw herself into projects. She reorganized the pantry completely, scrubbed the washroom until it gleamed, started a quilt from fabric scraps. But the nights were the hardest. The desert darkness was profound, and every sound made her jump. She found herself sleeping in Cole's chair by the fireplace instead of the bedroom, wrapped in his blanket that still smelled like him. On the third night, riders came. Katie woke to hoofbeats and voices outside. She grabbed the shotgun, crept to the window. 4 men on horseback circled the house, illuminated by moonlight. One of them was the bandit who'd fled the stage robbery, she was certain. Her hands shook as she checked the shotgun was loaded. "We know you're in there, girl," one of the men called out. "Bennett's gone. It's just you." Katie didn't respond. She moved away from the window, positioned herself behind the heavy table. "We're not leaving without what we came for. You can make this easy or hard." Katie's mind raced. The sheriff's office was 15 miles away. No neighbors for miles. She was alone with 4 men who clearly meant harm. She cocked the shotgun, the sound loud in the silent house. "First man through that door gets both barrels," she called out, surprised at how steady her voice sounded. Laughter from outside. "Feisty. I like that." Footsteps on the porch. Katie aimed at the door, finger on the trigger. The handle turned. The door shook as someone tried to force it. Katie counted to 3, then fired through the wooden door at knee height. A scream of pain. Heavy cursing. The footsteps retreated. "You shot Danny, you crazy woman." "The next one goes higher," Katie shouted back. She broke open the shotgun, reloaded with shaking hands. Silence outside. Katie waited, counting heartbeats. Then hoofbeats again, but different. Coming fast from the north. A single rider. The men outside heard it too. Urgent voices. Confusion. "It's Bennett! Let's go!" More hoofbeats, this time departing. Katie stayed frozen, shotgun ready, until she heard Cole's voice. "Katie, it's me. Don't shoot." She ran to the door, threw the bolt, pulled it open. Cole stood there, rifle in hand, eyes wild. He took in her disheveled appearance, the shotgun, the bullet hole in the door. "What happened?" Katie told him, words tumbling out. Cole's face went dark with fury. He checked the porch, found blood. "You hit one of them." "Good." He turned back to her. "Did they hurt you?" "No, they didn't get inside." Cole pulled her into the house, bolted the door behind them. He set his rifle down, then gripped her shoulders, studying her face intently. "You sure you're all right?" Katie nodded. Now that the danger was past, she was shaking. Cole saw it, guided her to a chair, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. He poured her whiskey from a bottle she hadn't known he kept. "Drink," Katie obeyed. The liquor burned, but it steadied her. Cole paced the room, checking windows, his anger palpable. "I shouldn't have left you alone. I knew those bandits might come looking. You couldn't have known they'd find the ranch? I should have." Cole stopped pacing, looked at her. "When I realized I'd left my spare ammunition here, I turned back. Got a bad feeling." His voice dropped. "If I'd been 10 minutes later..." Katie stood, the blanket falling away. "But you weren't. I'm fine. We're both fine." They stood facing each other across the room. The lamplight flickered between them. Katie saw something break in Cole's expression, saw the carefully maintained distance finally crumble. "I can't do this," he said roughly. "I can't keep pretending." "Pretending what?" Cole crossed the space between them in 3 strides. His hands cupped her face, gentle despite their roughness. "That I don't think about you every minute. That I don't want you." His blue eyes searched hers. "Tell me to stop. Tell me this is still just employment." Katie's breath caught. She could see the war in his expression, need fighting against honor. She lifted her own hands, covered his where they held her face. "I can't tell you that," she whispered, "because it would be a lie." Cole made a sound low in his throat, and then his mouth was on hers. The kiss was fierce, desperate, full of weeks of denial. Katie responded with equal hunger, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. Cole's arms wrapped around her, crushing her against him as if he could pull her inside his very skin. They broke apart, both breathing hard. Cole rested his forehead against hers. "This changes everything, I know. People will talk. Helen Morris will have a field day. Let them talk." Cole pulled back enough to see her face. "I'm not an easy man, Katie. I'm set in my ways. I've been alone a long time. So have I." Katie touched his face, feeling the stubble rough against her palm. "I'm not asking for easy. I'm just asking for honest." Cole's expression softened. He kissed her again, slower this time, tender. Then he lifted her, carried her to the bedroom, kicked the door shut behind them. "Are you sure?" Cole's voice was strained with the effort of holding back. Katie answered by pulling him down to her. Later, much later, they lay tangled together in the moonlight streaming through the window. Cole traced patterns on Katie's bare shoulder, his touch reverent. "I was starting to think I'd lost this. The ability to feel anything." Katie turned in his arms to face him. "You loved her very much." "Elizabeth." "I did." Cole's eyes were sad, but honest. She was delicate, refined. Everything a proper wife should be. "And when she died, I thought that was it. That I'd had my chance at love, and it was over. But..." Cole's hand moved to Katie's waist, pulled her closer. "But you're nothing like her. You're strong where she was fragile. You're bold where she was timid. Your curves and fire in life." His voice roughened. "And somewhere in the last 3 weeks I fell for you so hard I couldn't see straight." Katie felt tears prick her eyes. Everyone else wanted me to be smaller, quieter, less. Then everyone else was a fool. Cole kissed her forehead. "I want you exactly as you are." They made love again as dawn broke, slower, learning each other. Afterwards, Katie dozed in Cole's arms, safer than she'd ever felt. She woke to the sound of hoofbeats. Cole was already up, pulling on his pants, grabbing his rifle. Katie dressed quickly, joined him at the window. A dozen riders approached, led by Sheriff Price. Cole relaxed slightly. "It's all right. That's the sheriff." He opened the door, stepped out on the porch. Katie followed. Price dismounted, took in the scene with shrewd eyes. The bullet hole in the door? Cole and Katie standing close together. He said nothing about it, just tipped his hat to Katie. "Got word from one of my deputies. Doc was treating a man with a shotgun wound last night. Man got drunk, started bragging about raiding the Bennett Ranch." Price smiled grimly. "Led us right to the rest of his gang. We've got all 4 in custody now." "The one from the stage robbery?" Cole asked. "That's him. They've been hitting ranches from here to Silver Creek. Thanks to Miss Sullivan here shooting one of them, we finally caught them." Price looked at Katie with respect. "That was brave shooting, ma'am. You saved yourself and probably prevented a dozen more robberies." Katie felt her face heat. "I just did what I had to." "Well, you did it well." Price glanced between them. "I'll need you both to come to town tomorrow, make a formal statement. But I wanted to ride out here, make sure you were both all right." His eyes lingered knowingly on Cole. "Both of you." Cole's arm moved around Katie's waist, pulling her close. A public declaration. "We're fine, Gary. Better than fine. Price nodded slowly. I expect Helen Morris will have plenty to say about that. Helen Morris can mind her own business, Cole replied evenly. A slight smile touched the sheriff's face. Fair enough. I'll see you both tomorrow. He remounted, led his men back toward town. Cole and Katie stood on the porch, watching them disappear. Cole turned to her, his expression serious. Last chance to change your mind. Once we ride into town together tomorrow, everyone will know. There will be gossip, judgment. Katie thought about it. About the women like Helen who would call her shameful. About the men who would smirk and make assumptions. About a world that had always told her she was too much or not enough. Then she looked at Cole, at the man who'd saved her life, given her shelter, seen her worth when others saw only her body, who'd kissed her like she was precious and made love to her like she was everything. I'm not changing my mind, she said firmly. Cole's face broke into a genuine smile, the first she'd seen from him. It transformed him, made him look younger, lighter. Good. Because I'm not letting you go. He kissed her there on the porch in the full morning light, not caring who might see. Katie kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into it. When they broke apart, Cole took her hand. Come on, we've got work to do. Those cattle won't check themselves. They spent the day riding the range together, Cole teaching Katie the boundaries of his land, showing her the secret springs where water gathered, pointing out the tracks of coyote and bobcat. Katie had never felt more free, more alive. The desert that had seemed so harsh and empty now felt like possibility. That evening, they made dinner together, moving around the kitchen in easy harmony. Cole told stories about growing up in Texas, about learning to ride before he could walk, about coming to this harsh land and falling in love with its stark beauty. Katie talked about Missouri, about her father's farm, about the loneliness of losing everything familiar. After dinner, they sat on the porch again, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Cole had his arm around Katie, her head on his shoulder. I want to marry you, Cole said quietly. Properly. Soon. Katie's heart soared, but she kept her voice steady. People will say it's too fast, that we barely know each other. People will talk no matter what we do. Might as well give them something worth talking about. Cole tilted her chin up to look at him. I know what I want, Katie. I'm 42 years old. I've been alone long enough to know when something's real. Katie kissed him softly. Then yes, I'll marry you. Cole pulled her closer, buried his face in her hair. Thank you, he whispered, for taking a chance on a lonely rancher. Thank you for seeing me. Really seeing me. They stayed there until the stars emerged, making quiet plans for their future. A small wedding, just the sheriff and his wife as witnesses. Katie would keep working the ranch alongside Cole. Maybe in time they'd build a bigger house, raise children who would run wild across this beautiful, harsh land. The next morning they rode to town together. Katie wore her best dress, her hair pinned up, her chin high. Cole sat tall in the saddle beside her, his hand occasionally reaching across to touch her knee, a reassurance. In town, heads turned. Whispers followed them down the main street. Helen Morris stood outside the general store, her mouth pinched in disapproval. Katie met her gaze steadily, refusing to look away. At the sheriff's office, they gave their statements about the bandit attack. Price listened, made notes, then leaned back in his chair. Those men will hang for murder, attempted murder, and robbery. You did good, both of you. He paused. Now, is there anything else you two want to make official while you're here? Cole glanced at Katie. She nodded. He turned back to Price. We'd like to arrange a wedding as soon as possible. Price didn't look surprised. I can marry you myself, being a justice of the peace. How about Saturday? Gives folks time to adjust to the idea. Saturday's good, Cole agreed. They left the office and walked down the street, still drawing stares. At the general store, Cole held the door open for Katie. Helen Morris looked up from behind the counter, her expression sour. I need fabric, Katie said clearly. For a wedding dress? Helen's eyes widened. For a moment, Katie thought she'd refused to serve them, but the store owner recovered, pulled out bolts of fabric with stiff movements. I suppose congratulations are in order. Thank you, Katie replied graciously, refusing to let the woman's attitude affect her. They selected cream-colored silk, lace for trim, new shirts for Cole. As Helen tallied their purchases, Cole pulled out money, but Katie stopped him. I have my own money. She pulled out the $17 from her dress hem. I'm paying for my own dress. Pride flashed in Cole's eyes. He nodded. Let her pay. It was a small thing, but it mattered. Katie wasn't marrying him out of desperation. She was choosing him, equal to equal. As they loaded their purchases onto the horse, a woman approached. She was older, gray-haired, with kind eyes. "Mr. Bennett? I'm Ruth Palmer. My husband owns the ranch east of yours." Cole tipped his hat. "Ma'am, this is Katie Sullivan, my fiancée." Ruth smiled warmly at Katie. "I'm pleased to meet you, dear. And I want you to know, not everyone in this town is small-minded like some." She glanced meaningfully toward the general store. "You're welcome to visit any time. I could use another woman to talk to out here." Katie felt a rush of gratitude. "Thank you, Mrs. Palmer. That means a lot. Call me Ruth. And congratulations to you both." She patted Katie's hand before walking away. The small kindness buoyed Katie's spirits. Not everyone would judge them. They'd find their people, build their community. The ride back to the ranch was peaceful. Cole seemed lighter, happier than Katie had ever seen him. When they arrived home, he helped her down from the horse, then kissed her thoroughly before leading the horse to the barn. Katie went inside, started supper. While it cooked, she spread out the fabric on the table, began planning her dress. It would be simple but beautiful. She'd make it herself, her own hands creating the dress she'd wear to marry the man she loved. Cole came in, washed up, pulled her into his arms. "I want to show you something." He led her to the bedroom, opened the top drawer of the dresser. Inside was a small velvet box. Katie's breath caught as Cole opened it. Gold ring sat inside, simple and elegant. "It was my grandmother's," Cole said quietly. "I want you to have it, if you'll wear it." Katie's eyes filled with tears. "It's perfect." Cole slipped it onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if made for her. He kissed her knuckles, then pulled her close. "3 more days and you'll be my wife." 3 more days, Katie echoed, her heart full. Saturday arrived, bright and clear. Katie woke early, her stomach fluttering with nervous excitement. Cole had spent the night before at the Palmer Ranch to preserve propriety. Katie had slept alone in the big bed, missing his warmth but treasured the anticipation of their wedding day. Palmer arrived mid-morning with her daughter Lucy to help Katie dress. The two women had become friends over the past few days, Ruth proving to be warm and welcoming, happy to have another woman nearby. They helped Katie into her dress, arranged her hair, added wildflowers Lucy had picked that morning. When Katie looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The dress fit her curves perfectly, the cream silk making her skin glow. Her auburn hair was swept up, tendrils curling around her face. She looked beautiful, radiant, happy. "Cole's a lucky man," Ruth said, squeezing Katie's shoulder. They rode to town together, the Palmer's wagon decorated with ribbons. At the sheriff's office, a small crowd had gathered. Not everyone was friendly. Katie could see disapproval on some faces, but others smiled genuinely. And when Cole stepped out of the office, looking handsome in his new shirt and vest, none of it mattered. His eyes found hers across the distance, and Katie saw everything she needed to see. Love, desire, commitment, certainty. He crossed to her, took her hand, raised it to his lips. "You're beautiful," he whispered. "You're not so bad yourself," Katie replied, making him smile. Sheriff Price married them in his office, Ruth and her husband standing as witnesses. The words were simple, traditional, but they held weight. When Price pronounced them husband and wife, Cole kissed Katie tenderly, cupping her face in his hands. "My wife," he murmured against her lips. Katie smiled. "My husband." They signed the marriage certificate, accepted congratulations from those who offered them. Even Helen Morris managed a stiff nod, though she didn't speak. Katie didn't care. She had Cole's hand in hers, a ring on her finger, and a future spreading before them. The Palmers hosted a small celebration at their ranch, just the 4 of them and Sheriff Price and his wife. There was cake, coffee, and conversation. Katie felt welcomed, included, part of a community for the first time since leaving Missouri. As the sun began to set, Cole and Katie made their goodbyes. They rode home together in the golden light, Katie seated behind Cole, her arms around his waist, her cheek against his back. At the ranch, Cole dismounted, then lifted Katie down. Instead of setting her on her feet, he carried her over the threshold, making her laugh. "Traditional," he said with a grin. "I like it." He set her down gently in the main room, now lit with candles Ruth had helped arrange earlier. The house glowed warm and welcoming, no longer a lonely man's shelter, but a home. Cole pulled Katie close, swayed with her, though there was no music. "I love you," he said quietly. "I know I haven't said it before, but I do. I love you, Katie Bennett." Katie's eyes filled with happy tears. "I love you too." They made love slowly that night, taking their time, savoring each touch. This was different from before. This was their wedding night, the beginning of their life together. Afterwards, Katie lay in Cole's arms, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Are you happy?" Cole asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her back. "More than I ever thought possible." Katie tilted her head to look at him. "Are you?" Cole's smile was genuine, reaching his eyes. "Yeah, I am. For the first time in 4 years, I'm actually happy." They fell asleep tangled together, safe and warm and loved. The months that followed were the happiest of Katie's life. She and Cole worked the ranch together, equal partners in everything. He taught her to rope cattle, to mend fences, to read the weather in the desert sky. She taught him to laugh again, to see joy in small moments, to open his heart after years of shutting it away. The gossip in town eventually faded. Some people never accepted them, Katie knew, but others came around. Ruth Palmer became a dear friend, visiting often. Sheriff Price and his wife had them for dinner monthly. Even Helen Morris thawed slightly, though she never quite managed warmth. Winter came, harsh and cold. Snow fell on the desert, transforming it into a white wonderland. Katie and Cole huddled by the fire on long evenings, reading together, talking, planning for spring. They spoke of expanding the herd, building a new barn, maybe starting a family. One morning in February, Katie woke feeling ill. She rushed to the washroom, her stomach rebelling. Cole followed, concerned, holding her hair back while she was sick. When she finished, he helped her wash up, led her back to bed. "Should I get the doctor?" His face was worried. Katie shook her head, then smiled. "I don't think that's necessary." Cole's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "You think you're—" "I'm late, and this is the third morning I've been sick." Katie took his hand, placed it on her still flat stomach. "I think we're going to have a baby." Cole's face transformed, joy and wonder, and a hint of fear all mixed together. He pulled Katie into his arms, held her tight. "A baby. Our baby. Are you happy about it?" "Happy? Katie, I'm terrified and thrilled and grateful all at once." He pulled back to look at her. "We're going to be parents." Katie laughed, feeling the same mix of emotions. "We are." Cole spent the rest of the day treating Katie like spun glass, refusing to let her do any heavy work. She finally had to remind him she was pregnant, not broken. But she appreciated his care, his obvious excitement. That evening, they sat on the porch despite the cold, wrapped in blankets, watching the stars. Cole's hand rested on Katie's stomach, already protective. "What do you think Elizabeth would say?" Katie asked quietly. "If she could see us now." Cole was silent for a long moment. "I think she'd be happy for us. She always wanted children. She'd want this house to be full of life and laughter again." He kissed Katie's temple. "She was a good woman. But you're my future now. You and this baby." Katie leaned into him, content. The past had shaped them both, brought them to this moment. But it didn't define them. They were writing their own story now, creating their own future on this harsh, beautiful land. Spring arrived with its usual drama, the desert blooming in defiance of its dry nature. Katie's belly swelled with their child, and Cole became even more protective. He hired 2 ranch hands to help with the heavy work, refusing to let Katie do anything strenuous. Ruth Palmer visited often, bringing baby clothes she'd saved from when her own children were small. She and Katie would sit together sewing tiny garments, talking about pregnancy and motherhood. Katie soaked up her advice, grateful for the older woman's wisdom. One afternoon in early May, Katie was hanging laundry when her water broke. She called for Cole, who came running from the barn. His face went white, then determined. He helped her inside, sent one of the ranch hands racing for the doctor and Ruth Palmer. The labor was long and hard. Ruth arrived first, taking charge with calm efficiency. The doctor came hours later, found everything progressing normally. Katie gripped Cole's hand through the contractions, drawing strength from his presence. Finally, as the sun set, their daughter was born. She came into the world screaming her displeasure, red-faced and furious. The doctor placed her on Katie's chest, and Katie fell instantly, completely in love. Cole stared at his daughter with wonder, touching her tiny hand with one finger. She gripped it, and tears filled his eyes. "She's perfect." "She is," Katie agreed, exhausted but elated. They named her Rose Elizabeth Bennett, honoring both her grandmother and the wildflowers that bloomed against all odds in the desert. G had Cole's blue eyes and Katie's auburn hair, and she owned both their hearts completely from that first moment. The weeks after Rose's birth were a blur of sleepless nights and endless wonder. Cole proved to be a devoted father, walking the floor with Rose when she cried, changing her nappies without complaint, staring at her for hours like he couldn't quite believe she was real. Katie would watch them together, her heart full. Cole would hold Rose against his chest, Swaying gently, singing old cowboy songs in his rough voice, Rose would settle against him, content and safe. One night, Katie woke to find Cole's side of the bed empty. She found him in the main room, sitting in his chair by the fireplace with Rose sleeping on his chest. He looked up as Katie approached, his expression soft. "Sorry, did we wake you?" "No." Katie sat on the arm of the chair, stroked Rose's downy head. "I just missed you." Cole smiled, shifted Rose carefully so he could put his arm around Katie. "I was just thinking about everything, about how much has changed in a year." "Good changes? The best." Cole kissed Katie's shoulder. "A year ago I was alone, convinced I'd die alone. Now I have you and Rose and more happiness than I thought possible." He looked at Katie, his eyes serious. "You saved me, you know. I was just existing before you came. You made me want to live again." Katie felt tears prick her eyes. "You saved me too. You saw me when everyone else looked right through me." They sat together in the firelight, their daughter sleeping between them, and Katie knew this was what she'd been searching for all along. Not perfection, but belonging. Not easy, but real. Not conventional, but theirs. Outside, the desert night was still and peaceful. Somewhere a coyote called to its mate. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent and eternal. And in their small adobe house, a family slept safe and warm and loved. The years that followed brought challenges and joys in equal measure. Drought one summer that tested their endurance, a harsh winter that killed several cattle, but also Rose's first steps, her first words, the addition of a son they named Jack 2 years later. The ranch prospered. Cole's herd grew, his reputation as a fair and honest rancher spread. Katie became known for her hospitality, always welcoming to neighbors and strangers alike. Their home was often full of people, laughter, life. Helen Morris eventually apologized, stiff and awkward but genuine, admitting she'd been wrong to judge them. Katie accepted graciously, understanding that people could change. On their 10th anniversary, Cole took Katie riding to the spot where he'd first saved her from the bandits. The old stagecoach road was barely visible now, reclaimed by the desert. But the memory remained vivid. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if that stage hadn't been robbed?" Cole asked, his arm around Katie's waist as they looked out over the valley. Katie considered. "I'd probably be miserable in Silver Creek, working at some hotel, still believing I wasn't good enough. Their loss." Cole turned her to face him. "Best thing that ever happened to me was you rolling into my life." Katie smiled, touched his face. They'd both aged in the decades since they'd married. Silver threaded Cole's hair, lines bracketed his eyes. Katie's figure had changed with 2 children, her hands roughened with work, but when Cole looked at her, she still saw the same desire, the same love from that first night. "Best thing that happened to me was you not being able to resist," Katie teased. Cole laughed, pulled her close, kissed her thoroughly. "I never stood a chance. From the moment I saw you standing there covered in dirt, refusing to be defeated, I was done for." They rode back to the ranch, hand in hand. Rose and Jack were waiting on the porch, Rose at 10 already showing signs of her mother's strength and her father's determination. Jack at 8, all wild energy and mischief. They ran to greet their parents, and Katie's heart swelled. This was what she'd found in the harsh desert. Not just survival, but a life worth living. Not just acceptance, but love. Not just a place to stay, but a home. That night, after the children were asleep, Katie and Cole sat on their porch as they had 1,000 times before. The desert spread before them, beautiful in its starkness, full of hidden life. "Do you ever regret it?" Cole asked quietly. "Giving up the possibility of an easier life?" Katie thought of the women she'd known in Missouri and Springwater, living conventional lives in conventional places. Safe, perhaps. Accepted. But small. She looked at her husband, her partner, her love. She thought of her children sleeping peacefully inside. She felt the desert wind on her face, smelled the sage and dust and possibility. "Not for a single moment," she said. Cole smiled, pulled her close. They sat together watching the stars, 2 people who'd been rejected and lost and lonely, who'd found each other against all odds in the middle of nowhere. The desert night wrapped around them, vast and infinite, and in the heart of it a family thrived. Proof that sometimes the harshest places grow the deepest roots, and the most unlikely love stories are the ones that last forever.